You're listening to episode number 130 of the Transform Your Life from the Inside Out podcast. Now, this episode is an interview, and I'm interviewing Mem Jenkinson. And in this episode, she's going to share with you how she went from a life resigned to cancer to a lifetime of health and vitality. Personally, I think it's an amazing story. And even if you're perfectly healthy, what she shares about her mindset and how she shifted in her stories applies to any of you and pretty much every one of you and me as well in every aspect of our life. Okay, give it a listen. Hi, I'm Jim Fortin, and you're about to start transforming your life from the inside out with this podcast. I'm widely considered the leader in subconscious transformation, and I've coached super achievers all around the world for over 25 years. Here, you're going to find no rah-rah motivation and no hype, because this podcast is a combination of brain science, transformational psychology, and ancient wisdom all rolled into one to take your life to levels you've never thought possible. If you're wanting a lot more in life, to feel better, to heal, to have peace of mind, to feel powerful and alive, and to bring more abundance and prosperity into your life, then this podcast is for you, because you're going to start learning how to master your mind and evolve your consciousness. And when you do that, anything you want then becomes possible for you. I'm glad you're here. All right, guys, on this episode, I've got an amazing, I think you'll agree as you listen, an amazing, wonderful human being, Mem Jenkinson. You guys are going to fall in love with her. Her energy is amazing and very infectious and just pulls you right in, and her smile is amazing. Beyond that, she has an amazing story for you guys. And what I would call the story is her life transformation around health and wellness, and where she was when I met her and she enrolled in my programs, and where she is now. And I've known her because she's been in my programs now. She just finished her second one. So I've known her now for, I guess, almost a year, right, Mem? Something like that?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm smiling here ear to ear because I know her story, and I want her to share her story with you, the listeners, because there are so many things and so many takeaways, not just about health and wellness, but I think what she's going to share with you guys, you can apply to any area of your life, whether it be your health and wellness, relationships, or building a business, or whatever it might be. And I do want to point out that she said what everyone says. She enrolled in my transformational coaching program, TCP, because she wanted to grow her business. And 9 times out of 10, that's why most people enroll. And they realize that to grow their business, which I even talk about in the pre-trainings before, and she's grinning, that you've got to grow yourself before you can ever grow your business. So, Mem, I just want to dig in with you. So if you would please tell everyone where you were when you started with me in terms of your health and your business, everything, whatever you want to share. But tell what I'd like to establish here is the before and then where you are today. So let's start with where you were when we met.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Thank you for having me as well.
My pleasure.
Well, I am I'm based in Australia. I'm a married mother of 2 small kids, and I run my own online coaching business. And my life was going along swimmingly well. In fact, I'd reached the point where I actually thought the next chapter of my life would be the big, long, fun one. We were just about to move into our forever home. Business was great. And then I was diagnosed with breast cancer in November 2015, which, as you can imagine, completely pulled the rug from under me. It came out of nowhere. I had no symptoms either. And it really changed the trajectory of everything in my life, as it does for so many others. During that time through treatment, though, I established my business, and it actually gave me a focus. So business-wise, things were ticking along really well. I was winning awards, and through treatment and my diagnosis was all clear. Everything was fine after treatment.
Right.
But what I hadn't really understood at the time was that my mental health particularly had been really affected. And I was slowly getting into a position where I really thought my life would never be the same again. I was walking around in a constant state of fear. And even though lots of things in my life had come back together again and were going really well, my health and my mental health and my well-being really wasn't. It was completely off the rails, and I was in a constant loop of fear that the cancer was going to come back, I played out stories in my mind of the moment I found out it came back. I played out stories in my mind of how I would tell other people. It was just something that I was constantly thinking about, which completely took away all of my inner peace.
Yeah, so let me back up here for a second. That's it's an amazing story. Now, once they found the cancer and then you were diagnosed, you went through, I guess, chemotherapy or whatever you did.
Yeah.
Um, how long did that take?
So I was diagnosed in the November, and by around August, I'd finished all of my treatment the next year. So
Okay.
August 2016. I still see my oncologist and my surgeon every 6 months. So it's still a big part of my life, even now, 5 years on. There are still reminders of what I had, but I was identifying myself as quite proudly as a survivor, as a cancer survivor. And having worked for a major cancer charity over here as well, I was in that space. So I was obviously very happy and extremely grateful to be a survivor. Many of my friends hadn't had the same prognosis as myself, and things had changed dramatically for them. So whilst I was very grateful, I think I also carried some guilt as well, but certainly hadn't moved past that period of my life. And I'd resigned myself to thinking I never would, that it would always be a big part of who I was to identify as being somebody who'd had cancer.
Yeah. Let me go there for a second, because you were grinning when you said that, and I know why, because of being in the program and things we talk about, is you said, I used to identify, there's the operative word, I used to identify as a cancer survivor. How do you identify now?
Now cancer is still a part of my experience, but it's in my past. Just as many other things are in my past as well. Now I identify as being somebody who is a happy, peaceful person. I'm sure we'll talk about this, but I choose to be a happy, peaceful person. I am an action taker. I identify as somebody who gets on with things, who I look at my life constantly now, because I mean, when you've been through TCP, you constantly are looking at how you can improve things, but now I'm always looking for opportunities and possibilities. And even through the experience of cancer, so many opportunities came from that anyway. Now even more have. But one thing that really was happening for me at the time was the constant loop of these negative, worrying, fearful thoughts. And I'd made the decision almost in my mind that was the way it was then. But at the same time, I was seeing a psychologist at the time, and I'd spoken to my GP and said to them before I joined TCP, even though I'm resigned to living in fear for the rest of my life, I just thought that was the way it was. I know I can be happier. I don't know how, I just know there's something else for me. I know I can be happier than this. What are the steps? What are the 10 steps to tell me how to be happier? Because I'll take them, because I know there's something on the other side. I just didn't know how to get there.
Yeah, so let's go back there for a second. So you lived in about a 2-year period before we met, 2.5 years, of, even though that you were air quote a cancer survivor, you lived in the fear and anxiety of, oh my gosh, what if it comes back? What if it comes back? Right? Okay, let's go here. So a big takeaway for people, and we're not touting the TCP program, right, in our time together. What we're doing is showing people what's possible for them. But what I'd like to do is dig into, what was that epiphany in the program and our time together, that aha, that awareness, to where you recognized that you didn't have to live in fear anymore?
Yeah, I know exactly when that was.
Please share.
I posted one day in the program, I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks in, and I had wanted to post about this in the Facebook group. I'd wanted to talk about this and ask for advice from the beginning, but being a fearful person, I held back. Anyway, I put the bullet and posted.
I remember, yeah,
to essentially say, can anyone help with this or not? But I'm constantly living in a loop of my cancer is going to come back. And I remember that at the time even when I was diagnosed, I had made the big mistake of Googling what my cancer was, and desperately looking for happy survivor stories and coming up with very few. And the stories that I told myself from what I found on Google were my cancer was a rare and aggressive kind. There was no known cure. It would likely come back as it had for all of these hundreds of others. I had, you know, very, very sadly, friends around me who were having secondary cancers or just didn't survive. And the constant stories were filling me with fear. So I posted in the group asking for help and had some amazing help. Jenny Peterson came back and said to me, you know, I've been through this myself. And in fact, she was the instigator to say, I personally don't identify as a cancer survivor anymore.
Wait, she did though. But keep on. Okay, I'm sorry. Keep on going.
Yeah,
She
she
did
had
prior
done
to.
previously, absolutely.
Yeah.
And she explained that to me, and that really helped. But after that, I think a few days later, you very, very kindly recorded a bonus session, a bonus training for us, all about how we could heal. And I remember distinctly being in the car with my husband saying, you've got to stop the car, Jim's doing a video. It's going to be really important. I think it's a message for me. And about halfway through, you actually said that it was partially because of the post that I'd made. But in this video message, you talked us through, the common theme was choice, about how we can choose to trust in our bodies because our bodies naturally want to heal. You gave the example of a paper cut and how if we cut ourselves with, you know, a paper cut, if we leave that alone, it will heal itself. And all of these stories, and the fact that you taught me through how I could change how I was thinking in an instant and choose to not be in fear anymore, choose to accept that my body already had healed so I could move past it. It literally changed it in that second, even though I was only a couple of weeks into the program. Just that realization that I'm creating this identity of being a person who lives in a loop of fear. I can just stop that. I can just stop that at any time and choose something new. And I cried in the
And it was easy, right? It was easy. People make it so hard, but I can stop that, right? Let me go here for a second and share something. Many years ago, back in 2010, I used to teach people that were unemployed how to be more persuasive and influential in their job interviews. So many people were in the United States unemployed. And I used to go to networking groups that were people that were networking looking for jobs. And the lady who ran this one group, and I used to speak for free back then, et cetera. The lady who ran this group, I'm going to slow down here for effect, but her body language was very slumped over. And she got up in front of the audience and said, you know what, guys, it really is a tough time. And we just have to stay positive and we have to support each other. I mean, it's so tough and there are no jobs out there. And you know, the good Lord willing, maybe something will just open up for us. And my thought was, hey, you're bringing down the entire room. Stop it. And I didn't say that, but let's go to community for a second. As you know, in my groups, we have the most amazing supportive community, right?
Yeah.
Now, I want to go there, is that a lot of people that are in support groups, and I'm not hating on, I'm not bashing support groups, but and please, you share your perspective here, is that a lot of people that are in support groups, they're not always support groups because a lot of people in the support groups are into victim mentality. Poor me, why me, I need help. Well, how could this possibly happen to me? Why did God allow this to happen? I'm not this person, I'm not that person. Oh my gosh. I'm a survivor. And it's a lot of, not always, but a lot of victim mentality in those groups, but yet they're calling them support groups. As I say that, what are you hearing and what do you want to share in your perspective now by being in a different community who pulled you out of that kind of mentality?
Yeah, well, I did have a lot of support initially from support groups, but what I found personally, probably because I'm empathetic, as many of us are, is that I started to take on the stories of other people. So it was not even just the stories playing out in their minds, but their actual diagnosis and stories. And so I pulled myself away intentionally from those. And TCP is the absolute opposite. The community that we have there is, it's an instant. We call ourselves the family, the TCP family, and we really are. What's especially helpful is the fact that we are a global family, so there is literally always somebody to call on or to speak to at any time. But the support, everything is left at the door. When you enter the community, anything from your past, unless you want to bring it into the group or talk about it, there are no judgments.
Yeah.
There is always somebody else who is undergoing a similar situation or has come through a similar situation to you. And the genuine love and support and guidance and encouragement and empathy, it's there constantly. It's such a positive place. And we tell it, like, I love the group. I love them so much. The coaches, the group, and yourself, Jim, as a combination is amazing. But when I joined, I expected to have coaching just from you, just quote unquote from you, and the bonus of your amazing team of coaches, and the bonus of the group and the community, which continues every time because most people stay in the program, and then we gain more friends each time as well. It's just phenomenal. Like, it's blown me away. And I've always been a person to have close friends, and I'm certainly not a loner. Like, I'm quite an extrovert, but having welcomed so many more hundreds of people into my life who have just lifted me up, I'll always be grateful.
Well, thank you for that. And I want to go there for a second. What I was looking for, which you've said in a different way, is in our lives, share with people listening how important the power of community is, either positive or negative.
Yeah, well, and this is something else actually that during the past year, going through change, making proactive changes in my life, I have really thought about who I want in my life and what I want in my life. And it certainly comes to people most of the time as well. The things I will tolerate, the boundaries I will set. And some people, I've literally removed them from my life altogether. And I send them away with lots of love. But I choose to surround myself now with people who don't bring me down, who don't bring me into a place of victimhood or resentment or guilt or shame or judgment or those things. And so I now have a sense of energy from people of what they're going to bring to or take from my life. And I think that comes down to knowing myself so much more now. Certainly in our community, there are none of those things, but externally, I now recognize in my, the groups of people or the people that I've had as part of my life previously haven't quite been the right fit for me, haven't taken me on the path I wanted to go on. And I now have the confidence, and I think the self-worth as well, to know what I need and want in my life, and certainly what I don't as well.
Yeah, let's look at that for a minute. Before the self-worth. So what I hear you saying is that we have to be, whatever's going on in our life, whether it's a job or health or wellness, we have to be careful about the people we surround ourselves with. Because if we don't, let's say, for example, it could be health. Let's say that your mother, I'm just making this up, was going through a lifetime of being unhealthy. Then she's going to project that on you, being part of your community. Things like it's hard to heal and just get used to the pain, and you know what, it could come back, and all these kind of things. As an example that I'm giving you here, and people listening, people project their stories about what is real and what's not real, or possible and not possible. And many times people are into what you and I call victim mentality, meaning they're blaming, there's nothing I can do about it. I just have to endure. I have to put up with it. Let me resign myself to where I am in life. Then let other people around me tell me how bad life is and what I have to, air quote, look forward to. And by the way, for people listening only, Mim is grinning. So I want to reinforce here that wherever you are in life, when you're trying to go to a higher level, be extremely careful with the community you have around you and the people, like Mim had said, the boundaries and everything else, because so many people will actually have a victim mentality towards life or a situation. And then what they will do is project their victim mentality onto you, as you should feel like them because it wasn't easy for them. Well,
yeah,
it's because of where they're holding their thinking. Because, Mim has learned with me and really come to know is move your attention, and you are where your attention is, right?
Yeah. And as well as that, I think when you're, for me personally, I was in my own victim mentality with so many things. And I recognize now how I have been the person to blame others when I should have taken responsibility for myself. And so it isn't just the people for me who have been like that as well, but it's also the people who supported that thinking with me. So whilst I might have enjoyed reveling in blaming others and it's not fair and poor me, I also had some people in my life who would be like, you know, you're right, it isn't your fault. Oh, you must feel so bad, and just reinforce that victimhood.
Poor
So
you. I'm so
yeah.
sorry this happened to you. Right?
We love those people when we're in that space, but we don't need that. We actually want people to not pander to that and to not enable that kind of behavior. One thing that I love about the community as well, and I was thinking about this the other day when I was at the chiropractor, it's like a constant space of adjustments. And even with the language that we use, there's so much help in helping us to reframe how we look at things, or even rephrase how we say things to ourselves as well. And it's like these constant micro adjustments along the way that help us to live happier lives. That's how I feel about the program too. But yeah, I hold my hands up. This time last year, I was absolutely in a space of not taking responsibility, whether it came to blame or my business or relationships. And things have changed very much in the past year.
Well, let's go here for a second. Even though, you know, people listening, even though I'm currently drinking a Synergy raw kombucha, which is watermelon wonder, there's no Kool-Aid in the group. I mean, the whole group is about awareness and free will and choice. And, you know, some people grow more than others because of their choices. But where I want to go here, and pretty much everyone I interview, whether it be in the current group, Matthew Bonadonna, and his interview just went up last week, or anyone else, something that everyone touches on, and I'd like you to share also, is the power of the stories that we tell ourselves. Now, before we go there, let's contrast. And I think you've already covered part of it, but what stories were you telling yourself after the cancer, and what stories are you telling yourself now?
So after the cancer, I was telling myself I was a survivor. I was lucky. However,
stop right there. Stop right there for a second.
Yeah.
And guys, people listening, I say this on every one of these interviews. People will say, Jim interrupts people. Well, I want to pull something deeper out of what she's saying. So when you told the story of you're a survivor, what did that mean to you at that time?
It actually meant, honestly, that I was surviving for a period of time, and at some point it would come back. That's what survivorship meant to me at that point. It meant that I was getting by, and it didn't mean that I was free. I felt like I had no freedom, and like I say, it came from nowhere. So I wasn't expecting to be in that position at all, but it felt that everything changed, and that identity I had clouded every single other part of my life, my relationships, my work, how I felt about myself, the hope for the future. So the stories I was telling myself were those stories that I'd found on Google, unfortunately, that it would come back, that I had to make the most of every day because there might not be many days, and that I would always have this half life of, the biggest thing was I'll never be as happy as I was before. I'll never be as peaceful as I was before cancer. And I'll never be the same again. I'll always have this overshadowing me. And the story that I tell myself now, and I mean this wholeheartedly, is my life is so much better now than it was before cancer. So much better. I have so much more peace now. I have everything I ever wanted. And if I could go back and tell 2015 Mim that things may have been different, but we work with what we have at the time. But the story is incredibly different. Now I tell myself the story that I'm healed, but more so, I'm healthy, I am happy, I am enjoying life, I am a positive person, I always look for opportunities, I'm successful in everything I do. The stories I tell myself now are focused on now, and they're not focused on the past anymore.
Or the future of, I'm going to be like this forever because I'm a survivor. And guys, that's why I interrupted her, because I knew she had a negative story even to those words, I am a survivor. Now,
Mm,
many of us in the world might say, well, that's positive, but yet she
mm,
had a negative connotation tied to that positive, and the negative connotation literally kept you suffocating. It kept you in
mm,
anxiety. It stole your peace, right?
absolutely.
Okay, now in the first group TCP that I did several years ago, I had a woman in there and she had a dramatic story like yours. And she said, I was diagnosed with a terminal illness. And as a result of that, I was given I don't even know what you call them, those little things you hang from your mirror and it's for the handicap parking, I guess a handicapped little
Yeah.
tag or whatever the formal name is. And she said, I could drive anywhere, drive right up to the front and park right there because I'm handicapped and I have a terminal illness. And she said, I refused to ever put that handicapped hanger sticker in my car because I refused to accept the identity of an air quote sick person.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And as a result of that, what happened is that she healed because literally it's mind over body. Now
Mm,
let's go to Jenny P that you talked about earlier. I have known
mm,
her. Now people listening don't know her, but I've known her since college, 30 years. And she was in one of my programs. She's in now, and she was in. I think she's on her second round, and she used to constantly call herself the cancer survivor. And then she had
mm.
all that baggage with the identity of being a cancer survivor. And I don't know if we can put it into words, but now, Mim, you're not a cancer survivor per se in the way that you were, because something you didn't mention that I think you've accepted for yourself is that you're a healer.
Mm.
You can heal,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. All the time.
And that eliminates all the fear and the worry and the anxiety that you had about, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, what, because when you were going, oh my gosh, what if it comes back? That would
Yeah.
throw you in the automatic anxiety,
Yeah.
right?
And the
Yeah.
biggest, and I think that anyone who has undergone any kind of a diagnosis will relate to this. Well, I know they will. Even though I knew intellectually, rationally, legally, a doctor will never be able to say to me, you're cured, 100% this will never come back. Even though I knew that would never happen, I
Mm-hmm.
always longed for it. I
Mm-hmm.
just wanted someone to say to me, you're okay now. And I would feel, how relieved it might be to have that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And the call that you did, the epiphany for me,
Yeah.
that was that call, that was that permission, which even though you facilitated it, it didn't come from you. It obviously came from within me. I
Mm-hmm.
gave myself that permission. I gave myself that statement of, you're healed, you're okay now, go and live your life. You've nothing to worry about. Everything is going to be amazing. And that was what I was waiting for, that I knew I was never going to get from the person I at that point wanted it from. It's the same with anything. We give ourselves permission, and we have the choice to think however we want to think about anything. And that was the call I was waiting for. Now, if to know now that I can make that call over any aspect of my life
Mm-hmm.
is so liberating and so freeing. But I know that so many others who have gone through a diagnosis will relate to that. We know we want the call, we know it isn't coming, but if I could explain to you that that's within you all the time, as long, if you can realize that you have the choice to be whoever you want to be, and to not be the cancer survivor if you don't want to, but even be the person who will never have it again. That's how I choose to be now.
Yeah, and let me go there for a second. Is that and people that have listened to the podcast, I've always been healthy. I'm 55. I've always been healthy. I've not had a prescription since 1992. And you heard me say that last year.
Yeah.
And then for whatever reasons it happened, I went into heart failure in 2020. I ended up in the hospital. The doctors don't know why. I mean, they did 3 days of all these I have health insurance, but really expensive looking into my heart and pictures and
Mm.
all this stuff. And the cardiologist said to me, I had two cardiologists, and one was a Debbie Downer, and the other one was positive. The chief one was positive. And he's like, we don't know why this happened. He goes, you're what we call a unicorn. You don't belong here. I mean, we would see something like this when you're 70, not when you're 55. And all my blood work was good. Everything was like A-okay. And they're like, why are you here? What caused this? Now, the the chief cardiologist said to me, he goes, I give you a 70% chance of full recovery. And the Debbie
Yeah.
Downer said, I give you like all these bad things can happen in your life, and you're going to be on medication, heart medication for the rest of your life. And you
Mm.
might not be able to live the life you used to live and all this stuff. And I remember in the hospital listening, and I'm like, no, that's not the case. That's not going to be the case for me. And that was in February. This is the end of August, so right at 6 months ago. And as of today, now I have to give credit to my brother-in-law, the shaman, because
Mm.
he's like, do you want to stay on meds? I'll help you, or do you want off? I will help you. I'm also not advocating that anybody listening just get off your meds. I'm just not
Mm.
doing that. You do what's best for you, however you choose to do that. But as of today, having testing and everything done, I am on no meds when the doctors
Yeah.
told me I would be on meds for the rest of my life. And I said, absolutely not. I am not
Yeah.
doing that. I'm healthy. Everything's great. Everything from blood pressure to blood work. And I weaned myself off the meds. Now, I didn't just wean myself off and not do anything else. I mean, my brother-in-law, the shaman, substituted all kinds of herbs and different things that he wanted me to do. And it was a process of about 6 months, but today I'm perfectly healthy. But my point is this, for anyone listening, you verify this, I verify it, is that whatever we accept from our doctors, no matter what degree they're an expert or not an expert, I mean, mine had a PhD and an MD from Stanford, a smart guy.
Mm.
But whatever we accept from our doctors or healthcare practitioners about what will or will not happen to us, especially if they give us something like, well, I don't know, it's going to be a thing for the rest of your life and you got to deal with it.
Yeah.
And we accept that, that will become our story and that will become our reality. Where we must
Yeah.
go is in the healing, right?
And I've had one of those doctors as well, who would say things like, oh, you have a chronic condition, and
Mm-hmm.
look at me with such pity and say, oh, you were so young when you were diagnosed. I was 36. So another story I had was, I'm a young mum with cancer. That's the story that was fed to me a lot. And and now I'll say to my husband, you know, if I ever have to see that doctor randomly, I'll say, that doctor's lied to me again today. He said I have a chronic condition and I don't. But it's so different when you are actually, I mean, my medical team, all in all, has been amazing and so positive, but I could have been unlucky and had doctors who said other things. And I think some of them don't realize the power of their language and words as
Yeah.
well. Yeah, thankfully my medical team as a whole is the opposite of that, and have, you know, they followed my transformational journey as well, and I've told them how I've managed to change things, and, you know, hopefully shared with them things that they can inspire their other patients to do. But I mean, even the word patient, I don't consider myself a patient anymore. And I look forward to my appointments. I have a scan every year and a mammogram every year, and I see my surgeon every year as well. And I look forward to those appointments now, because I call them my all clear appointments. I know in advance that it's just going to be a
Mm-hmm.
really positive, happy experience. If anything, it's just a chat. It's an opportunity to catch up with them, you know. So I do identify so much differently now.
Yeah, and I want to take that a little further, is that we have to be careful what stories we accept and who we listen to, even healthcare
Mm,
practitioners. Now, what I want to share with everyone listening is, if you need medical attention, then by all means get it. I'm not one to eschew Western medicine whatsoever. I think it has its
the
place in our
same.
lives.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the power of suggestion, though. When I was 8 years old, I grew up in a small farming community in Texas. And I used to go barefooted in the summer, because not because I couldn't afford shoes, it's just I used to go barefooted. I stepped on a little piece of glass, a little sliver, tiny little sliver, and I had to go to the doctor and shoot some Novocaine in so he could, find the glass. And I was 8 years old. And he said to me, he goes, Jimmy, he goes, brace yourself. This is going to hurt. And so what he did, and me being a hypnotist, I know this years later, is that he created expectation for me, being the doctor, because my mother always told me to listen to the doctor, do what the doctor tells you. He created expectation, and it really, really, really hurt. And it hurt probably 10 times more than it would have if he said, you know what, you're going to feel a little pressure or this or that, the power of suggestion. It would nowhere have hurt as badly as it did, because I was braced up ready for some pain, and I screamed like really loud at the
Yeah.
doctor's office. So what I want everyone to take away, and reinforce as you wish, is that we have to be careful who we listen to, because in the medical community, Again, I'm not knocking the medical community, but you know what? When you talk to doctors, and I know because I was just in the hospital 6 months ago. When you talk to a doctor about holistic healing or self-healing in particular, they look at you like you have three eyes. Like, how is it possible? Are you kidding? We need to hook you up to this and pump you full of that and do this to you and do that to you and probe you here and poke you there, and then you're going to heal. But if you use your mind to heal, which is divine intelligence, it's the force that
Mm.
runs through us. Oh my gosh, that's not going to work because it just doesn't work. And we doctors know that, but let us hook you up to a machine and poke a lot of pills in you, right?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, and I've been. I certainly advocate Western medicine as well, and I've had an incredible experience in terms of my medical team and the treatment
Hmm.
that I've had. But thankfully for me, I've also had a medical team who is completely on board and read up and into this kind of healing as well, the power of our minds, and it isn't just. I mean, this is another story that we're told when we're diagnosed with cancer. Think positively. If you think
Right.
positively, everything will be okay. But there's a big difference in thinking positively and actually thinking your life into existence. Just putting a cherry on the top and a smile on your face and feeling hopeful isn't the same thing as actually doing
Correct.
the work and making the choice to be different and feel differently. And I felt some resentment. Well, I felt a lot of resentment at the time when I was told by so many people, just be positive, like I am. I really am. Yeah, that made a big difference. Now, thankfully, yeah, like I say, my medical team have been, and I do see holistic practitioners as well. But I've had a really a holistic view of my treatment and everything since then as well, and I feel very supported. However, I do know many friends in the community have also had cancer and have had a very different experience to me. So, the power of
Hmm.
our minds is obviously what we can do for ourselves is immense. But now, because of how I've been able to move forwards and tell myself different stories from my cancer experience, that has completely now gone to every other part of my life as well, and my relationships and my
Hmm.
work and my well-being generally and my health. And so, yeah, the repercussions have been awesome.
Well, let me take that a little further again here is thank you for bringing that up is what if, and I'm going to, share with the listeners here the distinction you made. What if you still identified as a cancer survivor and all the negative stories that went with that, but
Mm,
simultaneously you thought positive? It doesn't really help that much because you still identify as a cancer survivor and all the stories that go
yeah,
with that. Now,
that sounds like a lot of hard work.
exactly. Now let's go to where you've gone to, is that you became, and which people hear me say a lot, you became the identity of a healthy and well person. Now,
Mm,
incidentally, you still think positively, but you're not thinking
mm,
positively as a cancer survivor. You're thinking positively by accepting the identity and creating the identity of a well person. And that's apples
yes.
and oranges.
Yeah, it's the difference between, and there's a fine line between the whole fake it till you make it and just
Hmm.
being it, being
Hmm.
the person you want to be. There's no fight, there's no hard work. I'm not telling myself one thing but believing the other.
Hmm.
I'm actually just letting go of all of those old stories and old feelings and old fears and old resentment, literally letting them go. It was the same when I quit drinking alcohol, which was a kind of a side effect of the PTSD having had cancer, and no longer identifying as being somebody who drinks alcohol. So now I identify as an alcohol-free person.
Mm.
There's no issue now. I don't feel deprived. I don't long for a life I used to have or may have had. And that's another transformation that I've had personally myself. And it's all down to identity. It's all down to not who I no longer am, but who am I? Who am I now, and who do I want to be?
Yeah, and if I remember, I could be very wrong here, and please correct me. Didn't you give up alcohol in your first TCP training, or was it
I
before that?
I'd just given up. So I gave up in January 2019 and I joined TCP in March. But I actually wrote my book during TCP.
Okay.
And so, yeah, that was out in January this year. And that was 100% down to the positive transformation that I'd had that continued through TCP and the support that I'd had as well. And again, identifying somebody who believed so strongly in who she was that I could put that out into the world without any fear either.
Let me go there for a second also. People listening, and if we have anybody that is being diagnosed with an illness, so we've established that what shifted for you was your identity, not the fake it till you make it, not the positive stories, but your identity. And I'm sure people are wondering, well, how did she create that identity? Now, by watching you and listening to you, and again, correct me if I'm incorrect about this, it was a single epiphany that you had that shifted your identity.
Yeah.
I remember doing that live call, and that live call when I said, the body heals itself when you allow it. You cut your finger, you don't have to focus on it. Basically, your finger will heal itself. What I'm curious about is in that moment when you recognized that is true, paper cut heals itself. We don't have to, but our whole body heals. Now, I don't know, but was that when you moved into the identity of being a healer or able to heal yourself?
Yes, because I literally told myself I am healed and focused on I am healthy, I am strong, I am whole, I am perfect. I'd been through surgery, but I felt perfect and whole. And I always knew that I had the capability to change things, but I didn't realize that was something I could change. I didn't actually realize that healing was something I could give myself. I always, like I say, I always felt that would have to come from somebody else. That would have to come externally from a doctor.
Stop. Wait. It had to come externally as opposed to internally. And that was the power shift when you recognize that my life and my healing is not contingent upon the external, it's contingent upon the internal. Because people can have all the doctors and medicine in the world and still kick the bucket.
Yeah.
Right? And then there are people
and how
that
liberating and powerful. Now I feel I can do anything. It's the same feeling, although this continues for a lot longer, when I had my kids, when I gave birth to my kids, and I felt, I'm sure the mums can relate, however that happens, I felt like Superwoman, like I'd done that, I'd created that, I'd made a life, I'd made a human, I'd gotten through birth, which I'd been told for decades was going to be a horrific experience, and it wasn't.
Stop right there. People giving you expectations and stories about how it was going to be for you, and you even went into it actually having that expectation and story.
Well, actually, I changed that beforehand. So I'd had this great fear about childbirth and everything we see on the TV about the screaming and the white knuckling and the pain and the terror. And to the point where I actually thought at that point, God, I might not be able to have kids because I can't get over this fear. And I actually went through a hypnobirthing course, which is obviously self-hypnosis. And I hypnobirthed both of my babies. It was the most relaxed, comfortable, pleasurable experience it could have been, and so I had proof in my life of how I'd gotten through similar fearful situations before internally, like you say. Not even though I learned the skills from somebody else, you apply them yourself. You choose whether to apply them or not.
Yeah, let's go there for a second. As you know, and I teach in TCP, I teach self-hypnosis. You've used the word already. I already see myself healed. Now, obviously, I don't know if you learned it prior in hypnobirthing or with me, but that's a hypnotic principle. What does that mean? Explain for people listening about the importance of seeing themselves underlined and write down the word already healed.
To me, it means it isn't an issue anymore. It's in the past. I'm already, there's nothing I need to work on except living my life today because it's already done. It's done. There's no working towards something anymore. I accept it and I feel positive and free because it's done.
Yeah, let's go there for a minute though, is working towards. If we're not already healed, we're working towards being healed, which means we're still not healed. But if we see ourselves as already healed, we are literally fooling the subconscious mind to buy into she's already healed. Therefore, the subconscious mind is going to respond and manage your physiology and your brain chemistry and your body chemistry as if you are already healed, right?
Yes, it's done.
Yeah, that's what I want. None of it's done. That's what I wanted people to hear is that many of us on our healing journeys, we see ourselves as healing. I will get well sooner or later. Well, that's not the same thing as seeing yourself as already well, because the unconscious mind doesn't know the difference between real and imagined. And if
Mhm.
you keep imagining, I'm healing, I'm healing, I'm healing, what you're really imagining is that you're not well. Whereas if you
That's right.
imagine, I'm already healed, now you're directing your unconscious mind to heal you. Okay, couple more places here is I know that you've talked about PTSD and anxiety. So how does that
Mm.
factor into all the entire story? Where are you now?
Yeah, well, PTSD didn't happen, or it certainly wasn't recognized and afterwards diagnosed, probably until a couple of years after my diagnosis.
Hmm.
I'd had, and again, it's because I'd resigned myself to thinking that I always had to live in a fearful situation. I wrote about it. I remember feeling very, not happy, but content with that being my life. But it played out in different ways. It certainly made my insomnia much worse. It had me turning to drinking far too much
Hmm.
alcohol, too much and too frequently, and to really not addressing the fear that and the issues and the story loops that were going on in my mind. It was constantly in my head. I lived every day from the moment I woke up till the moment I finally went to sleep, constantly thinking in some way that cancer was going to return to me. And it clouded every single decision I made, every single feeling and judgment that I had. It was only afterwards, looking back, that I realized how bad it had really got. Um, so having the diagnosis, and I did work with a psychologist who was amazing and definitely set me on the right path to make changes. But really, it wasn't until the point that I stopping drinking definitely helped.
Hmm.
But to the point where I joined the program and listened to that call from you, that I realized I can change my circumstance at any time. And
Hmm.
obviously, I can't speak to other people and their situation and circumstances, but certainly for me, I had the power to change things, and I decided to change it, and instantly everything changed. It was instant. And I picked up the tools. And one thing that you mentioned earlier about having the power to move your attention, to me, that was, it sounded too easy.
Right.
It just sounded too easy. I
New
just
age,
moved
new
my
age,
attention.
hokey dokey, what woo woo,
Yeah.
whatever. Right? That can't be as simple as
What
that.
do you mean? I just think of something more positive or hopeful. And
Yeah.
moving my attention, I'll be honest, when I was going through the PTSD and the anxiety, I would literally lie in bed and or wherever I was in the house or in the world, and whatever negative thoughts came in my mind, this is how I started. And this is something that people can probably take to do themselves if they're really struggling to break their attention. I would look around me and I would look at a plant. We have lots of plants in the house. And I would move my attention by saying, look, there's a plant. It's green. It has this many leaves, 1, 2, 3. And I'd get to the point of, in a few seconds, my attention was moved and I'd pick myself up and go and do something else. And that's how it started. It started with simple, well, I didn't feel like I could just switch my mind to, like we said before, something more positive. I
Right.
actually needed to do something really simple to shift it and then carry on with, whatever it was I was doing. And after a really short amount of time, those moments of thinking about the fearful thoughts, even though they were still coming up, they were much shorter, to the point where eventually now they hardly come up at all.
Yeah, let me add something there. Two things. Number one is moving your attention as a conscious activity. And we may be dealing with things like clinical depression that are coming unconsciously. So I wouldn't advocate that we just work from let's move our attention. But what I would
Mm.
advocate is maybe looking into self-hypnosis or looking
Mm-hmm.
into hypnosis, like Mim talked about using it for birthing. Even like the National Institute of Health in the US has confirmed that hypnosis is effective, for treating PTSD. And
Mm.
we can heal these things with our mind. And like for me, once we're done here, every day I drink magnesium
Mm.
chloride for my heart. And I drank it for a lot of years, but I stopped drinking it many years ago when I should have been on it and I wasn't. A whole different story. And it tastes horrible. And when it's horrible, it's like licking a metal pipe.
Yeah.
And I remember many years ago when I drank it, one of the first times, I'm gagging drinking like this magnesium chloride because I'm very sensitive. I like taste, it really kind of throws me sideways. And I remember one day that I had to take it. This was 2004, so 16 years ago. And this is when I started my journey into the power of moving your attention. Is I
Mm.
had to drink it, and as I was drinking it, I noticed a beautiful bluebird outside the kitchen window that landed on the fence. And
Yeah.
as I was drinking, I was paying attention to the bluebird, and I'm like, whoa, I drank this and it wasn't even bad. Why? Because I moved my attention, because my attention was, oh, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad,
Yeah.
to the bluebird. And it completely altered my sensory experience of drinking the magnesium chloride, right? So
Yes.
you've had that
Yeah.
same experience.
Oh,
Okay.
100%. And it started with hypnobirthing, but even since then, and especially in the last couple of years, I've really gotten into meditation and
Hmm.
find I feel very susceptible, certainly, to self-hypnosis.
Yeah.
But it's something that I really look forward to doing now and has made some significant changes in my life as well, and will continue to. It's something I'll practice for forever.
Yeah, I think people listening, if there's one takeaway, and I want to ask you, so you might want to let your wheels start running, that one takeaway that if somebody sat across from you and they're like, Mim, I'm sick, what do I do? What would you say? Don't go there yet. We'll go there in a minute. So I want to let your wheels start running. But I want to say, I think hopefully it came across in our time together by listening to you that anyone listening recognizes you can change your life in any given moment, no matter where
Mm.
you are, what's going on, your money, your health, your wellness, your relationships. You have that power to make choice to shift your life. And as Mim said, I often jovially laugh at people in TCP because so many people are like, my life changed. What happened? And I'm like, you changed. When you change on the inside, your life will change on the outside. So I think if I were to synopsize this one episode, it would be how powerful that every one of you are as a human being to create your experience. But it comes
Mm.
not from changing the outside, which is what we all try to do because we don't know any differently, to changing on the inside. Now, Mim, let's go to you and wrap this up. Is if somebody were sitting across from you and they were asking you how do they heal, and it was just you talking to someone else, your experience having healed, what would you tell them?
Mm. I would certainly tell them and tell myself a couple of years ago that the change that I wanted was always within me, um, and to have the confidence to trust myself and to trust what I wanted, who I wanted to be. And also, one thing that we told a lot as well in the cancer community is to take one day at a time, which really didn't mean too much to me in the beginning, but is so much more meaningful to me now because it gives me permission to let go of the past
Or
and
the
to let go
future?
of and the future, to let go of everything that isn't right now. Who do I want to be right now? And how liberating that is to actually only focus on being that person, to not have to think, well, who was I yesterday? Or what about the things that happened to me years ago? Or what about the fear of the unknown in the future? Just to focus on now and trusting that if I want to be any differently, to look within me and then be that person today.
Yeah, let me add there, even though I said we're going to wrap up, is in the TCP, your first one, there was a kid in there. And as you know, we really don't have a lot of 20 somethings. They're generally 30 and older. And this
Mm.
kid was hiking the Incan Trail down at Machu Picchu. And he messaged me and he goes, Jim, he goes, I have to hike the trail tomorrow and I'm so afraid. And I said, why? And he goes, because I have a bone spur that pops up sometimes. And what if I hike tomorrow and my bone spur pops up? And I said, you're not even there yet. Tomorrow, it's not even tomorrow yet. Why are you concerning yourself 24 hours ahead of time and then worry for a day ahead of time of
Mm.
something that may never happen and probably won't happen? So 2 days later, he messaged me and he goes, you know what? I had no problems hiking the Incan Trail. And he goes, I don't even know what I was getting into the day before, projecting that all that was going to happen to me, and it didn't. So people hear me a lot in the podcast talking about, and people think it's woo woo and blah, blah, and whatever, but living in the now. I even did an
Mm.
episode on there is no past, there is no future. Your life is only right now. Mim and I have been talking now for near an hour, and you've been listening for near an hour, and where we started no longer exists, and where you're going to, where you're going to be 15 minutes from now isn't here yet. There is nothing but now. So what Mim is talking about is that she wasn't worrying about where she'd come from or where she's going. She's healthy right now. But notice this, everyone listening and Mem, is that in that identity in the now, you're healthy in that identity in the now. It wasn't,
Mhm.
I may not be healthy later, or I was sick in the past. Right now, in this moment, I am healthy.
That's
So,
right.
and Mem heard me say this, and I mentioned this recently in a podcast episode, I think yesterday, is I gave you an STD in our time together. Surrender, trust, and do not doubt. Just let
Thank you for
go.
that.
Yeah, rarely do people say thank you for the STD, but people in my group are like, thank you for the STD. It's just breathe, surrender. This is where I am. Because like even when I was in the hospital and this one cardiologist gave me all this bad news, I didn't buy into it, but I'm like, wherever I am is where I am right now. And
Mm,
I already knew, I trusted myself because the paper cut example that I gave you, I already knew that I was going to heal. Now, I might not be there yet, but Mem, I haven't told anyone this. I laugh at this. Um, when I was there, the floor that I was on was the cardiac floor, and I was there for
mhm.
3 days. And they have like all these hospital rooms around the big circle in the middle with the nurses station and all that kind of stuff. Probably pretty common. And when the physical therapist came to get me, he was some 20 something kid. He goes, time to go for your walk. And all I did was walk around the circle, maybe 75 yards in total, maybe not even that. The very first day, I'm like, whew, I'm winded. That's really hard to do. But I knew that I wasn't going to stay there. And now, like my home in Arizona, I can go hiking and at 4,500 feet. But when I was there in the hospital, I wasn't like, oh, can I hike in the future? Can I do this? Can I? No, because
Yeah.
I knew that once a healer, always a healer. So I surrendered and I just let go. This is where I am. I trust and I know that I'm going to heal. And I do not doubt that I'm going
Mhm.
to heal because my body heals naturally. That's a good example. I mean, would you, in your
Oh,
experience? Okay.
100%. And by the way, no one can see, but Jim is the picture of health. I haven't seen you looking this healthy before ever.
Wow, thank you.
Absolutely. I mean, similar and not similar, but being in the chemo ward with the older ladies, I was 36 and they were in their 70s, 80s, 90s. And,
Yeah.
even then I remember thinking, this is surely not not it for me. But there's so much power in where we are today. Where are we in this very moment? And what if we're not happy? Do something differently. Don't be in this moment for any longer than you need to be.
It's so crazy you said that. I could talk to you forever. And people listening right now, if you've never been sick before, or you've never, let me back up. When she said, if you're not happy, then do something different. People listening that haven't been there, kind of like, yeah, yeah, blah, blah. Are we done yet? Blah, blah,
Mm.
blah, blah, blah. And they don't get it. But so many people don't get the simplicity of that. Is
Mm.
there was his name is Jim Rohn, and people used to call him America's business philosopher. And he said, you know what? Something along the lines, if you're not happy where you are in life, then change. You're not a tree. You can change. So anyway, Mem, thank you so much. I know there's going to be a lot of people listening. And if you're not having a health ailment and you're listening, what I want to point out is it's no different for anything in life, what she talked about.
Mm.
We might not be talking about healing, but the overall theme of our conversation is that you have power. And the
Mm.
question is how do you choose to use that power? And in the world we live in, just being candid, we live in a toxic world and a negative world and a Debbie Downer world. And the world right now in 2020, the world's coming to an end. And this economy did this. And this person is running for this office. And let me be negative, 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 negative. And you know what? I call that a virus in itself. And if
Mm.
you let that virus attack you, it's going to drag you down. So move your attention to the outcome that you want to create in life. All right, Mem, anything else?
Oh, I'm just so grateful to you, Jim. Thank you
Mm,
thank you for everything. Thank you for guiding me, and thank you to your amazing community and your coaches. I will forever be a part of TCP, and I
mm.
will forever be so grateful as well. The fact that I feel so powerful now in every aspect of my life and relationship and health and business, and the fact that I'm having an impact on others because of that is literally down to those very small shifts that have had such magical and powerful repercussions. So thank you for everything that you do.
and thank you for letting me serve. So, all right, everyone, take what you got here and use it and apply it on your own life. Thank you again, Mim. Okay, take care. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to this entire podcast. If you're the kind of person who likes to help others, then share this with your friends and family. You know, if you found value, they will too. So please share via your social media channels. Also, if you have questions, I'm here to assist. You can email me questions to support@jimfortin.com, and I may even use your question for a future podcast episode. Also, if you want transformational content like this daily, connect with me on Instagram. My Instagram name is I am Jim Fortin. Finally, I do have a personal request. I believe that we're all here to help others and to grow and evolve ourselves. Together, you and I, let's help more people. If you would please leave a review on iTunes, and a good one, by the way. I'd be grateful, and through your assistance together, we can transform more lives. Thanks for listening.